Delegate Pogge.
Next was my bill, House Bill 676. Mr. Chairman, we spent a lot of time talking about this bill. This bill also had a lot of time in the Disability Commission for 2 years with discussions. It is a bill that states that it declares the goal of the Commonwealth that each child who is deaf or hard of hearing is as linguistically ready for kindergarten as his peers. The issue arose that children were arriving to kindergarten who did not have a formal language, and I thank the members of Lead K for bringing this to my attention. The only thing this bill does is it establishes an advisory commission to meet for 2 years to make recommendations to bring back to the Disability Commission to make recommendations on best practices to teach kids. And the bill had a substitute, which I move.
All right, Delegate Pogge moves the adoption of the substitute for House Bill 676. Any questions regarding the substitute that you have in your packet? All those in favor of adopting the substitute, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The substitute is agreed to. Delegate Pogge, and the motion was?
The recommendation from the committee was to report with the substitute on a vote of 9 to 1.
All right, the motion before us that's been made by the subcommittee is to report the substitute for House Bill 676. All right, that's properly before us. Is there anybody on the committee that has a question regarding this bill? Is there anyone in the audience that did not speak in subcommittee that wishes to speak on this legislation? Yes, ma'am. Come forward and just identify yourself. And ladies, I want to make sure, nobody spoke in subcommittee, correct?
This is Jean Lavelle. Correct. This is the first time I am speaking in front of the committee.
Okay. Just want to make sure. We want to hear from the public, but if members of the public were heard in subcommittee, I do not want to hear testimony again. All right?
Understood, yes. And I am the president of the Virginia Association of the Deaf.
Okay. And each person is going to have 3 minutes because we have a very full agenda. Okay? And we'll take the folks in favor of the legislation first.
So I am against this.
Okay. Is there anyone that's in favor of this legislation? If you can come forward and identify yourself. And again, the same rule applies. If you spoke in subcommittee, we don't have time to hear a testimony that's already been heard by the subcommittee members,
Yes, sir.
okay?
Yes, yes, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Dr. Lori Bobson, and I have been a professional in the state of Virginia working with children with hearing loss for almost 18 years. During this time, I have seen children be very, very successful because of the essential steps that were in place, but often, way too often, I witness their struggle. Their families and their children struggle to get appropriate services and find qualified professionals. I feel like the greatest misconception that we have with this bill is that it forces you as legislators to pick a side, and this is not true. HB676 has been painstakingly constructed by Delegate Pogge to be fully inclusive and designed to help all children with hearing loss. Not only is this bill inclusive of all children with hearing loss, but it is also bipartisan. Better yet, this bill has been deemed to have no fiscal impact on the Commonwealth. For those of you who do not know, this is our second year working to develop a bill that could help all children with hearing loss. We have spent hundreds of hours of our own time and our own money working for this cause, but what I keep thinking is, what if we would have spent all of that time and all of that effort helping children? Where could we be now? We have spent 2 years fighting and working and attempting to compromise and collaborate, and I feel like we have delayed children those 2 years. I ask you to please vote yes for HB 676, and please do not delay those children 12 more months. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Valerie Abbott, and I am the mother of a hard of hearing child. She's here with me today, and I support this bill. HB 676 has some very strong voices on both sides. You can see that today. But if there is one message I want to highlight today, it is this one. Many children, maybe even the majority of children who would benefit from this bill fall in the middle. They are neither hearing nor are they considered deaf. My child is one of them. She is hard of hearing and she wears hearing aids, not cochlear implants. She has a severe bilateral loss that we did not discover until she was 2.5 years old. I want you to imagine thinking that your toddler could hear your voice and then learning she couldn't, and no one can tell you what happened. There are many types of hearing loss in children, and not all of them are diagnosed as infants. Not all of them are deaf. Some of them, like mine, are hard of hearing. And the beauty of HB 676 is that it is inclusive from every angle, from the variety of professionals at the table at the advisory committee to the types of communication choices that parents make on behalf of their children. This bill is inclusive and it is beneficial for all. Please, let's move this forward. Let's make this happen. Please vote yes on 676. My daughter has a few words.
Good morning. My name is Bridget Abbott. When I was born, I had perfect hearing. Then when I was about 18 months old, a genetic mutation changed my hearing through severe loss in both ears, but nobody realized it until I was almost 3 years old. My parents bought me hearing aids. They found the right people to help me, the right doctors, the right audiologists, the right people in early intervention. I worked really, really hard to learn how to communicate like other kids my age, and I caught up really fast. I play violin now in the upright double bass with the Richmond Symphony Youth Orchestra, and I have a lot of friends. I am lucky my parents dropped everything to learn to get me what I needed. But what about the other kids? The kids whose parents who can't drop everything, who don't know where to start? I am only 12, and the words in HB 676 are pretty big. But if this bill helps parents and professionals talk to each other and make other things better for parents and kids, then you should vote yes. It's a good idea. You should vote yes to HB 676.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Mitchell Harry, and I'm here as a deaf individual in support of HB 676. Now, I was born profoundly deaf, and I do use a hearing aid and a cochlear implant to listen and speak. And what's interesting for me is I was born before the time of newborn hearing screening, and my parents didn't have the resources like the internet to really make decisions for me as far as what language options to choose. So really, we've come a long way as a state with technology, with the services that we provide, but this is a great way to take it a step further in providing language options for deaf children and their families. So this is an unbiased bill that provides parents with all of the language options for their children, regardless of what language or culture it is. So I really urge you to support this really common sense bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I am Judy Alonzi, and I work in early intervention in the Richmond area. And early intervention serves children birth to 3. I'm a developmental specialist, but I'm also a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing. I provide services to infants and children who are newly identified with a hearing loss. And in the communication choice the family has made, and it's up to the families, whether they decide to use sign language or listening and spoken language, I'm able to provide both accurately. I'm here to express my support for this House Bill 676. For the past 12 years, I've worked with families that benefit from the newborn hearing screen, as their children were diagnosed with a hearing loss within the first month of their life. I take this job very seriously and very much to heart. It's a very critical point in a family when they find out their child is deaf and have to make decisions. This bill provides for children the early start in their journey for language acquisition and development, regardless of the communication choice they've made. But more work and support is needed, especially for underserved areas in Virginia. House Bill 676 is a comprehensive, unbiased bill to support the services to newborn babies entrusted to all providers in early intervention. It works, most importantly, within the guidelines and regulations of Part C of the law of IDEA. It's a law that we have to adhere to and follow their guidelines. And it provides family-centered services within a natural environment with meaningful outcomes and goals and evidence-based practices. House Bill 676 seeks to address the loss of follow-up to infants that do not pass their newborn hearing screen and therefore are not enrolled in our services in a timely manner to begin their language learning with their families. We often have infants that come into our office where families are not sure if the child has a hearing loss or not. They failed their newborn screen or they are put in a category of not sure. So much time is lost, that precious time within that birth to 3.5-year period of optimal language learning. Please vote yes for 676 so we can begin to improve services for all babies and young children born deaf or hard of hearing in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Lee Hartman. I am the father of a deaf 2-year-old. Charlie was found to be deaf before we left the hospital, as is mandated by IDEA. He was born through C-section, and the nurses told us at the time, Charlie failed his hearing screen. He's probably fine, but you should follow up on it. Because he was born through C-section, sometimes there's fluid in the ear, and that might cause a failure. And it was left at that. Fortunately for Charlie and for our family, we did follow up on it. And he has been given services that have helped him acquire language since that day. This legislation is meant to help these families go from detection to intervention, regardless of if they have a cochlear implant, whether they use cued speech, whether they use ASL, or any other modality. This is supposed to help us make our kids kindergarten ready and give them language acquisition. So please support our bill, and I thank the committee for their time.
Lee, thank you for being here. It's always good to see a constituent and a family who makes great wine. Yes, sir. And are these are folks opponents now of all the?
I'm opposed to it.
Okay, so I just want to make sure before we start that anybody else that wants to speak in favor of the bill, is everybody that wants to speak in favor of the bill spoken? Okay, yes, sir, go ahead.
Good morning to everyone. I was born deaf myself.
Sir, could you just identify yourself first, please?
I'm Gary Vall. All right, so I'm from Northern Virginia.
Very good.
I was born deaf. I was past president of the Virginia Association for the Deaf. 134 years ago, we represented 400,000 deaf and hard of hearing individuals and co-chair led a group. I have 2 bills, HB 40 and 1410 and HB 48 and HB 160.
Sir?
They've been tabled.
Okay. We need to direct our comments towards House Bill 676 because that's what's before the committee.
Okay. We're opposed to the bill 676. It needs more work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Catherine Milady, and I wanted to say that I'm opposed to HB 676. I feel that this bill promotes an either-or view on language acquisition that's biased towards listening and spoken language. There's no room in the committee for someone who opts for more than one approach. A parent who decides to incorporate American Sign Language and get a cochlear implant for their child would not be able to participate. The subcommittee that's proposed by HB 676 lacks the involvement of language specialists. It involves 3 medical professionals, but we don't go to the doctor or to the hospital to get language. We go to educators and language specialists to get language. There's no involvement of any deaf or hard of hearing adults on the advisory committee. And I don't understand why we wouldn't have a committee member included that has firsthand experience of what it's like to acquire language as a deaf person. There's currently no data available that shows the outcome of deaf children's literacy or language milestones in English or American Sign Language in Virginia and the Commonwealth. HB 676 lacks the measures to collect data and hold the state accountable to ensure that all children are meeting their language milestones. In the end, all we want for deaf and hard of hearing children is for them to arrive to kindergarten with language and ready to learn alongside their peers. The language can be English or American Sign Language or both, but this bill is one-sided and not inclusive, so I ask that you please vote no.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jenny LaVille. I'm president of the Virginia RID, Virginia Association for the Deaf. I want to protect and preserve the rights of deaf people in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's most important. I'm opposed, we're opposed to House Bill 676. This has been set in concrete on a medical track as a status quo for 70 years. That's not where people get their language. Language acquisition. I'm opposed to 676. It needs more work. The medical field should be set aside. That language acquisition and learning is not what House Bill 676, and there's been no data collected for all these years, so it's not a good bill. Please vote in opposition.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tom Downing. I'm a parent of 2 deaf adults. I come from 2 different worlds. As a deaf person, I was raised in a hearing world with hearing parents. And now today, I'm a deaf parent with parents of deaf children. That was the difference between me and my children, my experience and my children's experience. I feel that this bill does not have the merits for language development for profoundly deaf children. That's why I'm opposed to House Bill 676.
Yes, my name is Matt Burton. I would like to propose that you vote no.
Sir, can you pull the mic back around to you? Thank you.
Yes, my name is Matt Burton. I would like to propose that you vote no to 676. That bill just became this year, and it kind of came out after some bills were proposed last year to provide both sign language or any other language oppositions, English, for children to be kindergarten ready. The members who proposed the bill last year have reached out and tried to work with the members of the committee for the 676 and have been denied chances, and it is very clear that the 676 bill is lopsided, that they will not allow the ASL or any of those members to be involved, and the language acquisition and the data collection is just not there in the 676. And they spent a lot of time looking at the 0 to 3, and there's not a lot of future data provided either, where you may see a lot of those students who have, or children with the cochlears or the implants. And there's a lot of data, if you look, that those people or those students, when they get into the college, they may transfer into Gallaudet or RIT with those devices and are still either using sign language or sign language interpreters if they're in a mainstream here in Virginia or any other state. So we would suggest that you propose no to 676 or continue working on it and collect data from the 0 to 3 and in the future where those students end up in their university or future life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else that hasn't spoken in favor or in opposition? All right. I'm going to close the public comment then. All right, Delegate Boysko, then Delegate Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions for the patron. My first question is, Delegate Pogge, what is the provision for setting benchmarks in this legislation for the language acquisition through the advisory council that's proposed?
Delegate Pogge.
If you start on line 71, one of the goals of the committee, the advisory committee that will be established, is to assess the availability of services in the Commonwealth and also to assess the tracking progress to ensure that children achieve kindergarten readiness. The development of recommendations for creating benchmarks and for assessing data and tracking data will be upon the recommendation of the advisory committee. So what we're doing is we're creating a very balanced advisory commission who will look at all of these ways to obtain data and to track it and make that recommendation to the Disability Commission. Does that answer your question?
Just clarifying that there would be a provision for setting benchmarks.
Well,
that-
it's
that would
not
enable-
codified. It's up to the advisory committee. Then it will come back to us to put it in the code.
Okay. Second question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. I have spent a lot of time speaking with members of the American Sign Language community who are very concerned about being left out of the process. And I want to ensure that they do have a voice and an opportunity to participate and be part of this effort. Will meetings provide the opportunity for members of the ALS who are adults, who may not sit on the council, to provide feedback, ask questions, be part of the process in solving these issues?
The answer to the makeup of the commission is starting in line 34. There'll be 9 voting members, 1 parent from each of the 3 communication modes, which is American Sign Language first, then Listen and Spoken Language, and then cued speech. There also will be included 1 professional in each of the 3 communication modes, American Sign Language, Listen and Spoken Language, and cued speech. Then there are 3 medical advisors, a pediatric audiologist, a neonatal nurse, and a pediatric otologist. And that is the 9 voting members. There will still be 5 non-voting members, Early Hearing Detection and Intervention Program, a member of the Board of Visitors of the Virginia School of Deaf and Blind, a representative of the Infant and Toddler Connection of Virginia, a representative from the Virginia Department of Education, and a representative of the Center for Family Involvement at Virginia Commonwealth University Partnership for People with Disabilities. It is balanced along geographical lines and also professional lines, and from parents who have experience in raising children who have chosen each one of the 3 communication modes. It is very balanced and very inclusive, and the responsibility of these people will be to discuss the best ways to teach children in all 3 modes and to bring their recommendations back to the Disability Commission.
Thank you, Matt. Mr. Chairman?
Delegate Boysko, let's make it quick. We
Yes,
have
sir.
a lot of bills to go
Yes, sir.
through. and
Thank
if we
you. I
don't-
appreciate
and
it. This is-
Just so members know, if we don't get to them before we have to go for caucus, that means they're dead. Okay, Delegate Boysko.
One last question. These would be open meetings that the public could attend?
Yes, of course, and they'll be, I'm sure, published on the internet.
Delegate Boysko, are you not on subcommittee number 2? Okay. All right, thank you. Delegate Hurst.
I don't have a question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions by members of the committee? All right. The motion before us is to report the substitute for House Bill 676. All those in favor or opposed to that legislation, please record your vote on the electronic voting system. Have all members voted? All right, clerk will close the roll. That bill reports 15 to 4. Delegate Pogge,